All right, turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 2 this morning. We're going to start out by talking about Moses, and this is a passage that's normally talked about when Moses was born. But we'll turn it around today and talk about the portrait of a godly woman, a portrait of a godly mother, let's say. So Exodus chapter 2, verse 1. If you'll stand for the reading of God's word. It says, a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took him an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, but the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the riverbanks. And his sister stood afar off and to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. She had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. May God bless the reading of his word, and let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for today. Thank you so much, Lord, for each individual that you have put here today. And again, Lord, we thank you, Lord, for our mothers, and I pray, dear God, a special blessing upon them. And thank you so much, Lord, for this awesome opportunity, Lord, to preach a Mother's Day message, Lord, to these wonderful mothers that are out in this congregation today. And I pray, dear God, that you will be glorified through everything that's done here today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You may be seated. So a teacher gave her class of second graders a lesson on the magnet and what it does. The next day in a written test, she included this question. The question says, my full name has 6 letters. The first one is M. Now, what she was looking for was the word magnet, of course. But over 50% of the children wrote mother. Because that's the ones that pick up things. It's not a magnet. It's the mothers that pick up things, if you think about it. If you know that today, do you have a mother that picks up after you, or had a mother that picked up after you? Does anybody's household look like this? Does anybody's household look like the mother is always fussing because the kids won't pick up anything? I mean, we're the only one? I just want to make sure now, because, I mean, I hear it all the time. And so I just want to make sure everybody's household is the same. When we talk about godly mothers, when we talk about mothers in general, you know, one of the things that you as a mother, or maybe even a grandmother, or let's suppose that you don't even have any kids today, how you can be a mentor to somebody else, or a smaller child, or somebody else that you can help bring up. What is the church to do when I dedicate a baby? And on Mother's Day, sometimes, you know what I do? I tell them that the church is responsible, right? There's a responsibility of the church to raise the child up, because guess what? We're all responsible to help raise those kids, because when they're in our church, they become our kids. We become a family. So it's our job to make sure that you do that. So when we talk about this, I want you to think, anytime I always try to hit the total audience with a message, because I know that this is going to be one of those messages that you're going to think that's only going to be for mothers. So fathers is off the hook today. No, you're not off the hook. Trust me, there's going to be things in here that every one of us can get in this. So don't take yourself off the hook. Listen to the message and let it apply to you as a parent today, as a child today, to your parents, or whatever it is. But listen to it, and let's see what we can get out of this today. So Abraham Lincoln declared, no man is poor who has a godly mother. That's pretty good, ain't it? No man is poor who has a godly mother. If you have a godly mother, if you had a godly mother, let me tell you something, you are a rich person. A Spanish proverb reads, an ounce of mother is worth a ton of priest. Did you hear that one? An ounce of mother is worth a ton of priest. So in the passage, we're introduced to a woman named Jochebed. Jochebed was Moses' mother. You don't see that in the passage right here. You're going to see that if you read over in other parts of the scripture, you'll see that her name is mentioned. And we see that Jochebed, she stands as one of the greatest mothers revealed to us in scripture. Her selfless love and sacrifice that she done for her baby Moses was unbelievable of what she did. Matter of fact, it made the exodus of God's people possible. Let's suppose that Jochebed didn't take this little baby and you know what, and put him in the river and let him go downstream. What would have happened to the Israelites? It wouldn't have had nobody named Moses that would lead them out of Exodus, out of Moses, out of slavery for 400 years and lead them out. So now you see how important that Jochebed was at this point. So when we think about our mothers today, we find characteristics that stand as reminders to all our mothers. What did they do? They taught us, and they taught us how to live life. They taught us how to do things of life. Now, if you are a child in here today or a youth in here today, and you do not know how to wash clothes, you need to learn how to wash clothes. You hear me? And I'm telling you right now, you need, and Aaron pointed somebody out, or a couple people out. You need to learn how to wash clothes. You need to learn how to wash dishes. You need to learn how to run a vacuum cleaner. These are things that a mother is good at teaching their children. But the thing about a mother, though, I want you to know, a mother will do anything possible for their kids. I mean, they could be sick. I mean, this is the difference between mothers and fathers, by the way. Okay? When a father is sick, leave me alone. I want you to wait on me hand and foot. And I don't want all this stuff. I can't do that. I'm sick. You can't see that? You want me to do what? No, you go bathe the baby and feed the baby and all that. I'm sick. If a mother's sick, it's the opposite. A mother will do everything possible to make sure that baby's okay. I'm talking about, I've seen Michelle in times where she's throwing up and sick as a dog, but she's still taking care of those kids. Wait a minute, that might sound about how horrible a husband I've been. No, I don't mean it that way. I'm talking about... But she would do it. Even if I would say, no, I've got this. No, I'll get this. You know, it's just instilled in a mother. A good mother will always take care of their kids no matter what. They're going to hold on to their kids. And they're going to, when they feel like they're at their worst, nothing can keep them from serving their children. And it's amazing to me what a mother does. I can't understand it because I'm a man. I'm telling you, when I'm sick, I'm sick. I don't feel like doing anything. But a mother is totally opposite. They will do things that are beyond any man's strength in this world. When I sit there and say this, now guys, don't get me wrong now. I'm a man too. But I'm going to tell you this, though. A woman is stronger than any man that I know. A mother, I mean, now that's enough of you women now. It's okay for you to say it, Mr. Johnny, but all these women, you can't amen yourself. It's true, though. It's true, though. They're stronger because they do things that we would never even dream of. They do things that we could never even fathom in our lives. I mean, when I watched my mother go through things and the way she raised us and the way she was sick a lot of times and the way she would do this or that, she was there for us no matter what. When I watched my wife with our kids today, the same thing. She's there for them. And I see a lot of mothers in this church that are the same way. You're there for your kids. So when we talk about this word today, we're going to talk about Jochebed, and we're going to talk about the portrait of a godly mother. The first thing we're going to see is we see her credentials. Jochebed was an Israelite. She was one of God's chosen people. Now, when you talk about one of God's chosen people, that means that she was special. You know why? Because any Israelite at that time was special because they were chosen. They were a chosen nation chosen by God. Not only was she an Israelite, though, but she was also of the Levite clan. The Levites were priests. The priests were the ones who looked after the tabernacle when they were in the wilderness and all that. And then when the temple was built, they were actually over that and the affairs of the temple. And so we see that her credentials are there. So her and her husband Amram were evidently very dedicated and religious people who would carry out their duties and that they would keep the commandments of God despite what Pharaoh had said. They was going to do what they knew was right. So what does that tell us? What does it tell you today? Every person, every mother, every child needs what? Needs a godly mother. Every parent in here, every mother that's in here right now needs to be a godly mother. If you're not that to your child today, you're being a disservice to your children. Because what you want to do is you want to raise them up in a godly home. And let me tell you something. We're in a culture today to where there are a lot of single mothers out there. We're in a culture today to where, and that's okay. I feel for you, because when you do that, you're playing both roles. You're not only playing the role of a mother, you're playing the role of a father. So whoever's out there and is a single mother, you should be commended for it. And you continue to do that. But let me tell you something. When you're a godly mother, and this is not just for godly mothers. This is for godly fathers. This is for godly brothers. This is for godly sisters. This is for anybody that can raise a child up and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be the example to you. So what does that mean in the church when maybe you know that somebody's outside? What if you know that there's a child out there that does not have a godly parent? Where do we come in as that? What do? We should adopt that child as our own. I'm not saying you could sign the papers and adopt them, but you could take that child up under your wing and show them Christ. Because there are so many children out there that need God in their lives today. And we need to be those ones that would do it. So she had credentials. And the second thing she had, not only do we see her credentials, but we see her courage. Now, when Pharaoh said that, hey, you know what? Here's what happened. The Israelites, you remember that Joseph come into the land of Egypt. You remember, how did Joseph get there? He was sold by his brothers into slavery. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. As he gets out of his land, going into the land of Egypt, what happens? He gets into Pharaoh's house. You remember, Pharaoh's wife accuses him of trying to seduce her, and then he gets thrown into prison. When he gets thrown into prison, he gets down there for 2 years, and then they finally remember that he could give dreams, and now he's promoted to second in the land. Now, let me tell you something. Now, who's the only Israelite there at this time is Joseph. He's the one that come out of his land into Egypt because he was sold into there. But Joseph prospered in the land, and when he prospered in the land, what happened to the people? What happened to his people? They started growing. Matter of fact, not only did he have his own family, right? But what happened was his brothers had to come back into the land of Egypt because of a famine. Now that they're coming into the land and Joseph finally reveals himself to them, he invites his family, his father and all their family. He invites all his brothers and all their families to come live in the land of Egypt to where there's plenty of food. So what happens now is that the Israelites are starting to grow. And they're starting to grow by leaps and bounds. I mean, all over Israelites. They're starting to outgrow the Egyptians that was there. So Pharaoh's getting a little worried. Now, this is not the same Pharaoh that knew of Joseph. This is a different one. But all of a sudden, now what he's saying? He's saying the Israelites are growing too fast. What's going to happen is they're going to rebel, and they're going to want to get out of this slavery. And what's going to happen? They're going to try to overthrow us. So we better start doing something about it. So what he said to the midwives, the Israelite midwives, when they start having babies, when you go and you help them have that baby, and when that baby's born, you're supposed to take it and kill it if it's a male baby. So let me tell you, so here's now Jochebed's at the point of saying, hey, do I obey Pharaoh? Do I let them kill my baby? Or do I do everything in my power to save it? What does a good mother do? Let me tell you something. A good mother has courage. A good mother will stand up. Boy, you want to see, you know what? You ever seen Mike Tyson fights? He's a vicious guy when he gets in the ring, ain't he? I mean, he's crazy now. He's crazy as a loony. But I'm telling you, he can fight. Now, you remember how mean he looked when he got in that ring? You mess with a mother's child and see what she looks like. You'll see your head start spinning around. Like the Exorcist. She'll pick up anything to protect her child. Well, am I right, mothers? You will do it. And I'm telling you, you look scary when you mess with somebody's child. Now, you don't mess with some mother's child. That's one thing about it. You know, the guy will be over there, here's the father. He's been over there cool. Well, it'll be all right, honey. He didn't do nothing that bad. Just calm down. What you mean calm down? You better go do something about that. If you don't do something about it, I'm going to do something about it. Y'all laughing because y'all all been there before, ain't you? You know what it's like. You got that courage to stand up for your children. When all of a sudden, hey, the guy's a little bit laid back, but that woman, boy, when it comes to her children, they ain't nothing worse in the world than that mother, boy. I'm telling you, she'll tear you up. You better leave her alone. So what do we need in she gave her son away, and she was even at the cost of her own life. What do we need today? Do we need courageous mothers? You think we need courageous mothers today? Parents who will declare the same thing that Joshua said. You know what he said in Joshua 24:15, you know it. And if it seems evil for you to serve the Lord, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served on the other side of the river or the God of the Amorites in whose land you now dwell. But as for me and my house, you might not know the rest of that verse, but you know this one. But as for me and my house, we will what? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Let me tell you something. That means that a courageous mother will stand up against her husband. A courageous mother will stand against a father. A courageous mother will stand against anything to bring that child into church. And you know what? That's what we need. We need courageous mothers. Now, we got fathers and thank God we got a lot of fathers in here right now. But let me tell you something. We need those courageous mothers. Because fathers are different. Me and my kids' relationship and me and Michelle's relationships with them kids are totally different, you know. I can tell them something, and they'll do it right away. And don't be smirking, boy, I'll knock you out. But when Michelle says it, you know, it's a little different, you know. And how many mothers have you experienced that? You know, all of a sudden when you say something, but the father says something, they'll do it, and you get frustrated because they won't listen to you. And it's just an age-old battle that goes on, you know what I mean? But what it is that the mothers are so nurturing, you know, even though they got that courage in them, that they'll tear your head off if you mess with that kid. But along with that viciousness that they got in them with that, guess what? They also got that nurturing about them. And you know what happens is the kids become not afraid of you. And you know, the father's a little stern. We ain't got all that nurtured, you know, oh, it'll be all right. Shut up, boy. Go throw some sand on it. You'll be all right. But a mother, they'll nurture that child. And you know what happens along the way when that mother nurtures that child so long? He or she starts being scared of him. And then the words don't mean as much, you know, as far as do it. Go do that, boy. I'm going to whip your behind. You're right, Mama. Give me a hug. You see the difference in it? But we see her credentials. We see her courage, right? We see her courage to stand up and live for God and do the right thing. Once a little boy asked his father what a Christian was. And for a long time, the father sat with his son explaining in great detail exactly what a Christian was supposed to do or to be. When he was finished, he felt like he'd done a pretty good job. And he was like, well, I feel pretty good about what I've said to him and describing a Christian as well as himself. But however, his dreams were shattered when his son asked, Dad, have I ever met one? Man, could you imagine that? After explaining what a Christian was, you can explain it and tell what all the attributes of Christ was, and this is what we're supposed to be. Then the little boy to say, hey, have I seen one? You see, a courageous parent or a courageous mother will make sure that you stand up for God. No matter what happens. I don't care what happens. You've got to stand up for God. If it's a mother standing against a husband or a husband standing against a wife or a father standing against his children even, whatever it takes, you got to stand for God. And we got to start having that courage again to start standing for God. And that begins at the home. If you can't do it at the home, your kids are not going to have courage to do it at school. So you got to have courage to stand up and be a godly parent at your home. So we see her credentials, we see her courage, we also see her confidence. By confidence, I'm referring to faith, that she had faith. Her faith was so strong that she was named. Her and her husband was named in the great Hall of Faith, as they call it. Hebrews chapter 11, the Hall of Faith. I mean, these are people that have faith, not the size of a mustard seed, but the size of a mountain. I'm talking about these people did some courageous things. Like, let's say, for instance, Moses, their son, was mentioned in Hebrews 11. Abraham was mentioned in Hebrews 11. Well, what did Abraham do? Well, you remember he's the one that took his son Isaac up there to sacrifice him because God told him to do it. He was faithful enough to do it, right? He had the faith that God was going to take care of the situation, right? And you have all these people all throughout the Bible And they're mentioned in Hebrews 11 in the Hall of Faith. And now you've got Jochebed. I mean, not many of you have heard about Jochebed. The only time you've ever heard about Jochebed is that was the mother of Moses, right? So when you see these ones that were mentioned in the Hall of Faith, guess what? They had this faith that was unbelievable at this time. So what did she need the faith to do? Number one, she needed the faith to resist the world. The world was crying out for the death of her son, but her mother stood strong. You know what? I want you to think about that. Put yourself in her shoes, mothers, and say that, hey, somebody's calling out for the death of your child. What would you do? There's not many parents that would just give in. Do you think that Jochebed was the only woman at that time that tried to hide her son or their children? I don't believe so. I believe that there's too many mothers that would have fought that cause and hid their sons and daughters, or their sons also, to try to keep them from being killed. But Jochebed, she succeeded. She had faith in God, and she knew that God was going to take care of her child. So she went above and beyond. So at 3 months, she hid him for 3 months, hid him away for 3 months. But you know what? It was getting a little time, that, hey, we're going to get caught if we're not careful. We're going to have to take a chance. So here's where the difference between Jochebed and the other mothers were. Where the other one said, well, we'll just keep him in the closet. We'll keep him quiet when somebody comes in. We'll be fine. But Jochebed was different. She didn't just say, hey, we'll just keep him in the closet. No, we got to do something. We got to take some action. God's going to take care of this baby. You see what I'm saying? She's got to release this baby now. So she's taking this baby and she's putting it in, having the faith enough to build a little boat for him and send him down the river. Now, can you imagine the faith it took to send your baby? I want you to think for a minute. I want you to think about any kind of float. Let's just talk about the safest floats that we can find at Walmart today. All right? Probably Dick's Sporting Goods. They're probably a little bit higher class. But let's suppose that you find that really solid thing that it wouldn't tumble over. You know that your baby would be safe and all that. Would you still send him down the river without you? And then tell your daughter to go watch him? How many of you would tell your daughter to go watch your son as he floats down the river? Some of your daughters would be like, bye-bye. I'm an only child now. She had faith to build that boat, put him down in the river, and send him on, right? So she had to resist the world. The world was all the demands that was going on. You know what? The world demands our children today. The world demands our children. The world wants your child. Satan wants your child. What are you going to do about it? Amen. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. So we have to resist the world. The second thing she had to do was release the child. Again, it took faith to put her down and let her go. Now, I want you to think about this. Or let him go, should I say. Let me think about this. How many of you mothers? All right, this is a hard thing, right? The kids grow up, and all of a sudden it's time to let them go. How many mothers have a problem with that? Is that the hardest thing in the world? It's the hardest thing in the world for a mother to say. Dad be like, boy, I know what I'm going to do with that room. Boy, there's my man cave now. Woohoo! And get on out of here, boy. Go make you a living. You've been here long enough. But a mother won't do that. We're about to come up on that age now. I'm like, yes. And Michelle's like, I'm like, and he'll be gone. And one will be gone. What does the mother do? A mother wants to hold on to that child. But let me tell you something. As Jochebed had the courage to say, you know what, I've got to release my child. You've got to say that I've raised my child up in a way that I know that I've done the best that I can for them. It's time to release them. Can you do that? Mothers, boy, y'all looking at me like y'all want to eat me now. It's like, what did you say? I'm not releasing my child. But that's what it's going to take. To know that you've raised your child in a way that you can release them when they get to be an adult and you trust that they'll do the right thing. It's hard, ain't it? It's hard for mothers to do that. So she had to release the child. The second thing was she had to raise the child. After Moses had been found by Pharaoh's daughter, Miriam and Jochebed, the sister, were able to work things out to where Jochebed could be the mother of this child. See how God was in this? She had enough faith that God was going to take care of it, send him down the river. The rest of the babies, I want you to know, I believe that most of those babies died. But here's Moses. God had called Moses. And this woman, the reason that I believe that God called him was that he had faithful parents that were willing to bring him up in the right way and to do whatever it takes to save his life. Sent him down the river, and guess what? Now they they actually called for the mother. The sister was there and said, hey, I know somebody that can take care of him. And it was the mother. The mother now, let me tell you something. One of the hardest things in this world today is mothers will do what? They don't mind having babies. It used to be that, I say this, I've never been a mother, but I would think it used to be that it was just a scary thought to be a mother, to go through all the birth pains and all that stuff. Am I wrong or right? I mean, I don't know. It scared the heck out of me, but then again, I'm the wimpy man that's going to lay down in the bed while y'all are up sick and fixing things for the kids. But now a time, instead of being worried about the pain it takes to have a baby, you know what's wrong with the world today? They're not worried about the pregnancy. They're not worried about anything else. Fine, that's okay. We'll just have the baby and we'll give it up. And that's what's going on with our world today. Too many babies are being abandoned. If you're a mother here today and you have not abandoned your children, you should be applauded for that. In a world today to where it's acceptable to do anything. Matter of fact, we're in a world today, if you've had your child and your child come into the world and you did not abort your baby, you should be applauded. Because abortion is all over around, it's rampant and trying to take our kids all around the world. Okay? And then number two, if you still have your child and you raised your child, you should be commended. Now, let me tell you this, though. There may be a mother out here, I don't know. Maybe a mother out here, maybe a father out here that decided that, hey, I didn't raise my kid the way I needed to, or I wasn't there for my children. I want you to know this, that God is a God of grace. To where you might have been that person, that's okay. If you were that person with your child, be the better grandparent now. Be that godly grandparent now. If you can't do either one of those, if you can't be the father or a mother to your child, and you can't be the grandfather or grandmother to your child, help somebody else out. You got me? But God gives grace to that. And it should be a sensitive time with all of us because, hey, this happens in the lives of people all the time. But does it make them a horrible person? Guess what? We're all horrible. We're all horrible. Just because a parent abandoned their baby when they were young, that's okay. God offers grace for that, just like he offers grace for all of our disgusting sins that we have in our life every single day. Right? So we know that God is a God of grace that offers that grace. And I hope that he heals that hurt and that pain that's going on there. So now, let's just read some things that I saw. This is how to be a stupid parent. I should write how to be a good parent, but let's just, as I read these, I want you to think through these. How to be a stupid parent, okay? Discipline your children only when you lose your temper. Let them get away with anything until you're fed up. Then in a spirit of hostility and anger, let them have it. Blow your top. Holler. Get wild. Clobber them. And really make a brawl out of it. The children will get a bang out of you. Number two, don't make yourself approachable. You might have to listen and reason with them. If you get too chummy, they'll want to talk things over with you. And who's got time to waste with kids? You got more important things to do. Number three, if they done wrong, never let them forget it. Keep rubbing it in. They'll loathe you for it. Number four, give your child all the spending money he wants. Don't make him earn it. Money in large quantities is an acceptable substitute for love. By the way, let me pause right there. Do you realize that any youth or kids that are in here today, do you hear what I said? This is stupid things, parent. This is not acceptable, by the way. Just making sure I don't want my kids talking about, you said give me money. I don't think so. After a while, he'll only want your money and couldn't care less about you. It's something like starving him on cream puffs. Number five, compare your child with somebody else to make him smarten up. Use that beautiful expression, why can't you be like Johnny? He'll despise you and Johnny both. Now, this has actually happened in our house, by the way. I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to confess right here in front of all of y'all, right? When we watch, I done went blank now. What's Steve Harvey's new show? Little Big Shots. When we watch Little Big Shots, I look at my boys and say, why didn't you ever do that when you was 5? We could be rich right now. Just kidding, by the way. I do tell them that, but I tell them to them in a joke. So, all right. Matter of fact, they said that to their little sister too, by the way. So, Number 6, mother and father should disagree in regard to the rules for their youngsters. Children will learn to play one parent against the other. Boy, that's not true. Number 7, never let the kids think for themselves. They haven't the equipment. The reason may be in their heredity or environment. Make all the decisions for them so they'll never be able to handle life. And then number 8, treat them with suspicion. Never trust the sneaky little characters. Wait a minute, let me make sure. Did that say how to be a stupid parent? So, we see her credentials, we see her courage, we see her confidence. We also see her charity. You know what she did? She gave her of herself. She poured her life into the life of her son. I want you to think about that one. How many mothers pour their lives into the lives of their children? Over and over again. Well, there was a mother of 3 notoriously unruly youngsters, and she was asked whether or not she'd have children if she had to do it all over again. Yes, she replied, but not the same ones. Now, if you have kids that are unruly, you can't trade them in. This is not Walmart. You're stuck. So you just have to do the best with it, all right? So we knew that it's important that children give their, another thing is that it's important that children give their mothers the honor they deserve. She gave of herself for you. What do we do for her? What happens with us when we as adults, how many times does it, by the way, I'm looking across, and I'm seeing some coming up on the age of 17 and 18. They're getting there. We're looking at the youth in there. Let me warn you real quick what's going to happen when you get 17 and 18. Aaron, you better listen. Boy, you're 17 now. Let me tell you what's going to happen when you get to that age. Would a parent like to answer that for me? You know it all. Yeah, exactly. So guess what? Let me give you some advice. Your parents are not stupid. All right? They do know more than you know. Reason why is because they've lived a lot longer than you have. Well, rest of us is not, but Cheryl maybe. But with us, listen, we know what we're talking about. It doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. But listen, parents know what they're talking about most of the time. You know the reason why they tell you not to do something, by the way? All right? Because they've done it. And you know why they tell you not to do it? Because they know the consequence that they paid for doing it. So they're telling you don't do stupid things because the consequences is not fun at all. So avoid those areas. You know why? Because they're trying to avoid paying for your children. So parents, kids, when you get to that age, know that your parents are not dummies. Okay? They've been there. They've done that. Okay? So we know that she gave of herself, and she gave her son. Very literally. Jochebed was raising her son to give him to the Lord. She gave him to serve, to save the nation. If Jochebed wouldn't have done this, guess what? The nation of Israel might not have been pulled out of that slavery. Of course, God could have raised somebody else up, but it was Jochebed that he wanted because he wanted Moses to do this. So the last thing here is we see her credentials, we see her courage, we see her confidence, we see her charity. And number 5 is this, we see her compensation. Her son became a great man of God. I want you to think about this. He was the man who was chosen by God to be the deliverer of the people and the lawgiver. The law was given to him. Now, you don't think that Moses was an important person? Could you imagine if Jochebed would have done just the opposite as the other mothers did and sheltered their kids and said, we'll hide him? But because she had the courage and faith in God, she was able to let her child go, and he become a leader of a great nation, the greatest nation on earth. The United States is not the greatest nation on earth. I don't care what any of you think. You know what? Israel was God's chosen people, and there's no greater nation than all the world than Israel. I don't care how patriotic you are. Israel is a better nation than us. We better always be on Israel's side. We better never go against Israel. And when our country goes against Israel, we're going to be in some deep trouble. Okay? So just to throw that out there. That was on a side note. I won't charge extra for that one. All right, but anyway. So we see her compensation. I would imagine that Jochebed never realized the potential that her baby was going to have. I want you to think for a minute, real quick. I want you to think throughout history. Think about Billy Graham's mother. Did Billy Graham's mother know that Billy Graham was going to become one of the greatest evangelists of all time? You can't see that in a baby. You don't know who you're raising, do you? You don't know what kind of child you're raising. But before Billy Graham become who he was, guess what? Billy Graham needed somebody to lead him to Christ. So let me think about this. I want you to know this, that your child could be the one that leads somebody like Billy Graham to Christ. And all the rewards that Billy Graham's getting comes back over to you too, you know. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what kind of children we have. The problem is that we look too small on our children. We think that they don't have the ability to do things. They do have the ability to do things. They have the ability to become great people. And great, not in the eyes of the world. Anybody can do that. They can climb up the ladder and they can make a lot of money. They can do this and have success in the eyes of the world. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about growing up with Christian character. I'm talking about somebody that can lead people to Christ, to go and do and volunteer and go on mission trips and help people out. That's the kind of people that you want. That's the kind of people you want. You know? It's out now. I'll just go ahead and use it. One more example of this. I'll use her a lot. But John, when you were helping raise Tiffany, did you ever think for a moment that she was going to turn out the way she did? I mean, there's times I've talked to John, and I've been with John a little while and had some conversations. Sometimes you just feel like just kicking her butt. That's how all of us feel sometimes. We just feel like, what are you going to do? But you know what? She's had this great story about going and being stranded on a mountain, and now she's fixing to be a missionary in New Zealand. Imagine that. Now, what if John would have said, and John was a big influence in her life. I know he was. And let me tell you something. What if he would have just said, you know what, you're not going to amount to nothing. You see, that's what it means to be a parent. You will get compensation beyond belief when you raise that child up, and maybe it's going to be something that you never dreamed it would be. You know, I'm sure when my mother looked at me when I was a baby and said, that's going to be a preacher. I'm sure when she saw me in the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh, probably never did she think I would be a preacher. You know what I'm saying? But that's what God's doing in the life of your children. You never know who your child's going to be. And you never know what kind of impact it's going to be. Let's just suppose real quick, let's just get off of the grand things. Let's get off Billy Graham and all that. Let's suppose that there's a little kid. Well, let's go up in high school. Let's suppose that there's a ninth grader, and that ninth grader is really having a hard time in life. Ready to just give it up, throw his hands up and say, I'm done with this. I'm done with this life and everything. But because you raised your kid in the right way, your kid was able to go out there and talk him out of suicide maybe, and show him Christ who loves them, and maybe they could come to Christ in that way. You see, that's the kind of kids we want. And it can happen. It can happen. But we got to be the godly people that God has called us to be. Mothers, you are awesome. I can't tell you enough. Thank you so much. If my mother was here today, she's got her own church, and she has a daughter and a son and grandkids that go to that church. So she's got more people over there than I got over here. So that's okay. But I think my mother, I think all you mothers, and I tell you, if husbands, if you're here today with your wife, you better make sure you treat her right today, okay? And if your mother is here today, I heard an amen back there or something, didn't I? And if your mother's here today or is not here today, treat her with the utmost respect. And if you've got something against your mother and there's something's been going on, make amends. Make amends. But thank you, mothers, for all you've done. Let's pray.